Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by T.A. Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So many would say that nothing is more important to the sustainability of a community than the ability to prepare your residents for the jobs available. The Lansing Promise Foundation is a local organization that truly puts its mission where its mouth is, and here to tell us more about the Lansing Promise is its executive director, Justin Sheehan. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thanks, Chris.
Or should I say welcome back to the show? It's been years, but I'm really grateful to have you back.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
So tell me a little bit about the Lansing Promise. Basically, what is it and what's its mission? When was it founded?
Sure. Founded in 2012, first scholarships given. The concept was pretty simple. We imagined a city and a community where if every young person that wanted to go to post-secondary education, if they wanted it, we'd make it happen. Fast forward, we started with 50 kids in 2012 who applied and were accepted. And we just hit 360 on average every year, which is about 70% of the graduating class across the city of Lansing.
Is that right? Okay. Now, there are 3 high schools in the city of Lansing, right?
Well, 3 high schools plus Lansing Catholic.
Okay.
Is within the Lansing School District boundaries.
Got it.
We have a handful of homeschool, online, and GED students as well.
Got it. Okay. So it's not school affiliation, it's geography of where the graduate lives.
That's right. The movement of the Promise programs, nationally speaking, has been place-based.
Okay.
And so if a student lives, attends, and graduates within the Lansing School District boundaries.
Okay.
And so that's not city of Lansing, though it's majority of it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But as we know, and as I've learned, taxing areas are unique. So within the Lansing School District boundaries, live, attend, and graduate from 9th through 12th grade, you're eligible for up to $10,000 of scholarships.
So noble mission, but how did it get started?
I think it's the right question. The vision for this work started in 2001 with a scholarship called the Hope Scholarship.
Okay.
Helping other people excel. That was the first place-based scholarship outside of Jackson in the state. However, Kalamazoo came in with a few more zeros in the bank account, and they said, we will fund scholarships for all of our graduates in the city of Kalamazoo. They called it the Promise. The Promise movement sparked from there. When we established in 2012, we were one of 50 scholarship programs like ours in the country. There's now almost 400.
Wow.
In the movement. And we continue to see, we're even seeing entire states take on the Promise programs. The concept, and actually you said it really well in your intro. What happens when we take care of and do well by our kids?
Right.
The answer is they thrive. And when they thrive, there's unique benefits. For example, we short-circuit poverty. We raise healthier families. When you have a job, you often can fight homelessness. You can fight hunger. You can have health care, right? And so education really is a not only key component, I would argue it is the highest and strongest social mobility factor in the entire country. But what we've also found over the last decade of doing this work is that this is about education, employment, and entrepreneurship. Because reality is we are in a very new economy. Our kids need to be entrepreneurial in spirit, no matter what. Whether they're employed, great. If they are entrepreneurs, they will lead their organizations. They will understand how business works. They will understand how bosses work, right? And they will, in fact, eventually be one. Some of our kids need to run their own businesses. Some of our kids, and we've just expanded to skilled trades through the Promise, some of our kids need to run their own plumbing, pipe fitting, electrical outlet and outfit. But they need to understand business. Some of our kids need to go to 10 years of education because they're going to be surgeons. Great. Some of our kids need 6 months of welding, and they're getting hired before the program even ends because the demand is real, and they're going to get paid on the job. Great. What we want to see is success in and after high school for every student in Lansing. Our expectation is 100% of all of our students complete. Have we hit that number yet? No. But we have expectations of. And so as we've learned and grown throughout this project and this concept, what we found is a scholarship alone is money sitting on a table.
Right.
If kids do not internalize their own inherent worth and value, if they do not internalize that they are valuable to this city and this community, if they do not internalize that this city is actually relying on them to be successful.
Right.
And if they don't internalize that we're actually here to help, it's harder to move forward. So So flip the script. Our goal is, in fact, from kindergarten through 12th grade, and some would even say earlier, because we know 0 to 5 is actually some of the most critical components for education when it comes to young people, reading, attachment to adults, right? But assume at least we have access to students from K through 12th grade.
Yep.
We have something called the Lansing Save, which we are very much part of. It's a children's savings account. There's almost 8,000 children's savings accounts in the city of Lansing right now for students in K through 9th grade. That children's savings account is a savings account specifically, think of it as a 529,
Okay.
for their education post-secondary. So the question then becomes, if we can talk to kids from kindergarten through 12th grade, setting the expectation that, baby, you're going to be successful after high school. And in fact, there's money set aside for you right now. And so we have a lot of students coming in, giving pennies, giving $1, bringing cans in, right? If their parents make it to parent-teacher conferences, we're able to reward and encourage that kind of work.
Really? Wow.
And the goal, of course, and you might know this if you've written any checks to colleges, the goal is $500 in each account. Now, I run a Promise program that provides $10,000. In the next 2 years, we're shooting at possibly $20,000 a student, which is good money. We can talk about how it's funded later.
Right.
But that's good money. Here's what we found, though. The statistics indicate that identity-based motivation changes everything, right? You and I identify, or we have identity in certain things. Well, I do this, I do that. I am this, I am that. When young people see, well, he's successful and she's going to be successful and she's talking about college and she's talking about building a business and she's talking about employment after high school and we start to set these expectations of success, right? Whatever that looks like. It's going to look different for everybody. But when that success is internalized and identified, students begin to make better choices for themselves and their community. And so the concept around Lansing Save is when a student has $500 to their name by the time they graduate, that is set aside specifically for post-secondary activities. Can't be touched for anything else but educational expenses. Now, that could be buying tools to go be an electrician. That's still an educational expense.
Of course.
Right? But it's career-based. So long as they have $500, the studies indicate 3, 5, 7, or 8 times. In other words, a student, depending on the report or the study, is 3, 5, 7, or 8 times more likely to not only complete high school, but to get some kind of post-secondary credential. $500?
Right.
I'll just say this. That pays for a credit in some colleges.
Right.
Because it ain't about the money. Right? Now, our responsibility is to provide an opportunity for our kids. But our real responsibility as a community is to ensure that our young people have the opportunities they not only deserve, but that we need them to have. When it comes to not only reducing financial barriers, but to be perfectly honest, reducing emotional, social, and historic barriers. There's a lot of barriers that have been built in this city and in this country. And a lot of these programs across the state and across the country are in fact building. And in fact, there are 14 right now going on 15 Promise zones similar to ours in the state of Michigan. Then there's also Kalamazoo, which is fully privately funded. All the Promise zones that I'm speaking of are a dual funding, I guess you'd say. We have both private fundraising that we do, which is the majority of our funds, but also we are eligible for tax increment financing, which also all of a sudden makes it sustainable.
Right.
Right. So it's through the state education tax. We get just a small portion of it. As real estate property rises or values rise, we see more scholarship dollars. As more scholarship dollars get invested, more kids get education. As more kids get education, kids get better jobs. They buy houses.
Houses get fixed up. Neighborhoods become more affluent. Values go up.
That's right.
It's self-perpetuating. Okay. Fascinating. There's so much there to unpack. So the tax increment financing, I mean, what is the district? Is it the entire catchment of the Lansing Public Schools?
Lansing, yeah. So Lansing School District
so
itself
all of the values.
Was the entity that created the board or the entity itself.
Yep.
And thus it is all Lansing School District boundaries.
Got it. So residential, retail, commercial, all that stuff. Everything. As the tax values rise, a sliver of that gets knocked off. And
you got it. And invested back into our kids.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I guess the biggest question I have right now is how do you penetrate the actual kids and probably the parents to make sure that they're aware that this is here. Here's what it, I mean, everything you said is a massive value proposition. Right. And I don't mean to be a cynic, But a lot of times you will find apathy, when you do have generational poverty, and just a defeated mindset, right? So, I mean, this is all optimism and all statistic driven and all that kind of stuff. But somehow you have to get in there and just say, hey, listen, regardless of your circumstance today, there is this the situation where we are motivated to make sure you've got what I got. So where do you get that audience? How do you do that?
Well, you're asking the right question. I think we got to get to the humanity of it. The reality is there are some parents in this community who have been really hurt by the educational system, who have been failed by an educational system.
Okay.
There are some parents who have been affected by historic redlining. There are some parents who have been affected by systematic racism and discrimination, by social issues, and by personal issues. What we've found is trust is only earned. And so when we say that, you can create the greatest scholarship in the face of the earth. You could have unlimited money. We don't.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute.
We'd love to have unlimited money.
Yeah.
But what would unlimited money do? The answer is, if you don't speak to the heart and the spirit of our kids and their families, then we're not doing our job. And we will not see change. That's true. Here's the good news about that. Every parent I have spoken to wants better for their kids. Period.
Right.
There's not one parent in this city who does not want good for their kids. There's not one parent in this city who does not want to see their kids not only successful, but arguably more successful than they are.
Right.
Right. And that's the goal of generational change. The hard part is, by definition, generational change takes a generation. Right. Now, the good news to that is we've seen a 700% increase in scholarship usage since we started, year over year.
What does that mean?
So from our first class to our most recent class.
Okay.
That's a 700% increase.
Okay. Got it. That's number of people.
The number
that
of students.
Yep.
Yep.
You said over 300 a year for the last.
So we're at 370 now a year, which is about 70% of the graduating class.
Now, every one of them is a walking testimonial.
Amen.
Right.
And every one of them doesn't have some perfect trajectory on exactly how they got to where they're at. Right. Because it turns out, I don't know if you know this, Chris, none of us do.
I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up.
But we don't tell our kids that.
Right.
What we tell our kids is, oh, you're 18, you haven't figured out your entire life yet? Uh-oh.
Something's
you're
wrong
off
with
the
you.
rails.
Yeah.
Oh, you had a rough semester and you need to take a break? Uh-oh, you're off the rails. And what we're trying to explain to our kids is, no, take a break, get your stuff together, get a part-time job, figure your stuff out, get back at it. Yeah. Well, I failed a class. Okay.
Right.
The amount of things that I've failed in this job in the last 8 years, whew, but you have to learn how to deal with it,
right?
Fix it, apologize, make amends, and move forward.
Right.
And what we need to help our kids understand is the fear of failure is just that. It's only a fear. And what we've also been talking to our kids about is, what is bravery? Right? Is bravery the absence of fear?
Right. Nah, that's a great lesson.
And they say no.
Right.
Bravery is in the presence of fear.
Yeah, trying even though you're scared.
That's exactly right. And even though you know that failure is not only a possibility, but probably a reality. Because then we need to define failure. Right? The reality is, a lot of our students have not been, and I was one of them 20 years ago, have not been told, hey, when you fall down, that's expected, just get back up.
Right.
Keep moving. And when you fall down, guess what? Get back up again. And when I fall down,
right,
get back up. But then we always ask the kids, right? So when you fall down, what should I do? They sit for a minute and they say, well, help me back up. Yeah. And then we ask the reverse. And if I fall down, what should you do? Because what happens when we actually begin to trust each other and to look out for each other? And what if adults in empowered and authoritarian positions actually approach kids with humility? Because that's the real question. The reality is, social media and our political system and all the celebrities and all the echo chambers that are do not treat people as human. And in fact, the goal of a two-party system, for example, is to dehumanize the other person. There are exceptions to that on both sides.
Yep.
But that is the goal. And if our kids are being raised in that, then we have some work to do when it comes to how is it that we as a community build the humanity back into our community as adults, so we can demonstrate to our kids how it is that community is really built.
Right on. Well, I'd like to step aside and thank one of our sponsors, which is apropos, honestly, for this topic. When it comes to managing your finances and planning for your future, I suggest you contact my friends at Wagoner Financial. Whether you're just getting started, getting ready to retire, or anywhere in between, Wagoner Financial can help you make smart financial decisions. Don't navigate these complex problems on your own. Wagoner has the expertise to help you feel confident that you're making the right financial choices. Contact an advisor by calling 517-853-3367 or visit their website at wagoner-financial.com. So hopefully a lot of your students are going to need these kinds of financial planning, get their nest egg started.
Well, it's interesting you say that.
Moving.
I mean, Eric and his crew do a great job.
Yes.
And here's the question about it, too. When we talk about having children's savings accounts, what we didn't talk about is actually the financial literacy and training that goes along with it. So MSU FCU actually goes into something like 3,000 or 6,000 classrooms a year in Lansing School District.
Wow.
Monthly for months, just to make sure that kids have a grade or age-appropriate understanding of money, of finance, eventually of credit, of a thing called delayed gratification, which most adults don't understand.
Right.
How debt works, how credit scores work, right? And the understanding of what it looks like to have opportunity cost. Right? So all these pieces have to happen, because if a kid graduates from Lansing not only with the expectation that I will be successful, that there's a community that gives a damn about me, who's putting money aside to invest in my life because I'm worth it, but also I'm going to know how to handle my money when I get out. I'm going to know what a budget is. Most adults don't know that.
Right.
I'm going to understand what credit looks like and how I could use it.
Yep.
I'm going to understand what the word compound interest means, which no one taught us in high school.
Yep.
At all.
No.
We could be all multimillionaires, and instead we're trying to pay off credit cards.
Right.
There's a disconnect that actually we're working as a community in this district to ensure that our kids don't have. And so what happens when kids are not only savvy with what they do have, but also have a plan for what they're going to have. Right now we're talking about generational transformation, and it's not about the money. Let's make sure we're real about that. But it is about the opportunity to make choices for themselves and for their families.
Okay. So I want to cover a couple of topics as we kind of get close to the finish line, because this is just fascinating stuff. I guess one of the questions I have is, with all of these graduates that are out there in the world, is there any kind of expectation or even obligation for them to mentor the next gen? I mean, it just seems like having someone that graduated 2-3 years ago that is, because the best way to be a great student is to also teach.
That's right.
Right. So to get someone who's maybe 22 years old and has an accreditation, is maybe even they're a rookie, at some HVAC company somewhere, but has kind of walked that through, who maybe meets once a quarter with a junior in high school, just saying, hey, this is real and this really works. And here's my pay stub and here are the things that I'm building towards. And does any of that exist formally, or does that happen anecdotally?
So anecdotally, it has happened.
Yeah.
What we're actually, and excitingly, we just brought someone on to help us build exactly what you're talking about.
Perfect.
The concept in the research is called near-peer mentoring.
Yep.
Probably the better statement around it, though, is credible messenger.
Right, exactly. Right. Because again, I can tell them, you can tell them, their principals can tell them,
that's right.
Parents can tell them.
That's right.
But that third party, I can teach my kid how to swing a baseball bat.
That's right.
And explain, no, you're doing this wrong. You got to do it this way. No,
that's
Dad,
right.
I don't want to do it. And then a coach comes in and says the exact same thing.
That's
and
right.
because it's someone else,
that's right.
They listen and they're like, Dad, look how successful I am. I'm like,
right.
I told you the same stuff. But
Right.
So I totally get that concept, and I think I think that's fantastic, because I think fans a flame of success and having that credible person.
And trust. Right? The reality is a 41-year-old white guy coming in sometimes is the right messenger.
Right.
Sometimes I'm not.
Right.
Sometimes I talk loud and they say, who is this guy?
Right. And why should I listen to him?
Why should I listen? Now, the amazing part, let me give credit to the kids in Lansing School District. When they know someone cares, they really do listen. Right? We've had entire crews, entire classes in auditoriums at Everett, at Sexton, at Eastern. And their ability to listen, compared to my ability to listen in high school, it's unbelievable. These kids are unbelievable. And we always talk about a couple of different things when it talks about defining your success, defining what success looks like for you, right? Because it shouldn't be my definition of success.
Right.
It should be their definition of success, whatever that looks like.
Yep.
Right, which I may even get into a quote in a minute from a Dr. Cornell West on that very topic. But the reality becomes we also ensure that our kids understand that they are beloved, which often makes high school students giggle a little bit.
Right.
Because we say, you are beloved. And they giggle and they're like, what on earth is this guy coming in and saying? But by the time we're done, they're leaning in and understanding that if they are beloved and there's a community that cares and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, right? We've invested more than 2,000 students. We've invested more than $5.3 million, and we're just getting started because this ain't about the money, right? It's about relationships, communication. It's about early literacy opportunities. It's about mentorship.
Yep.
But it's also about simply changing the conversation to ensure that our kids understand that there's a community that cares, that what they do matters, that who they are matters, and who they become matters. And it matters to their parents and their families. It matters to their little brothers and little sisters. It matters to their teachers. And it matters to this community as a whole. And if that's true, then we as a community have a privilege to invest in the future of our kids.
So I'd imagine, all right, so you've got the educators in the Lansing school districts and other, like whether it's homeschooled or Lansing Catholic.
Lansing Catholic,
yeah.
Yep.
So they're probably invested in this and want to see this happen, right? Yeah. You got the parents hopefully are interested in having their children be successful, as you mentioned. Who else is helping you with this cause? Board of directors, that kind of stuff? So
the goal is to keep it as complicated as possible. So I have 2 boards.
Oh.
So we have about 30 board members, but they operate in joint board meetings.
Okay.
Which is very good. So we have what we call the Zone Authority. That's our tax capture piece.
Okay.
And they have the Lansing Promise Foundation, which is the 501c3.
Got it.
Both work together under one mission, which is really to ensure that our kids have access to post-secondary education, period. Within that, though, of course, we have accumulated and taken on some endowments.
Okay.
When it comes to from the Community Foundation, the Hope Scholarship itself was originally started in 2001. We have been able to maximize every dollar since we took it on 3 years ago, so that we are ensuring that Lansing's young people from Lansing to post-secondary have opportunities. We've ensured that additional scholarships, for example, like from the Pentecost Foundation, from McLaren Foundation, from various individuals, from the Lansing Education Advancement Foundation, we're learning that we're becoming sort of a trusted source and a trusted operator.
Yeah.
In the understanding that we have zero interest in making money on this.
Right.
We have every interest in taking every dollar that we can muster and investing into our kids now, because we know the return on investment is significant. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have reserve funds. That doesn't mean we don't have all the intelligent things. That doesn't mean we don't have laddered CDs right now. Of course we do.
Yeah.
The market's good. But we want to take that money, and instead of sitting on it,
right,
we want to invest in our kids right now.
Deploy.
And so in order to deploy, we're actually going to be considering doubling our scholarship from first and second year to third and fourth year as well at our post-secondary institutions at MSU, Olivet, and Davenport, which is exciting. LCC is a full ride. Books, fees, everything, skilled trades. It's an exciting time.
Right on. Fundraisers. How can people get involved who are listening? We got to get to the finish line here in a minute. So I just want to make sure, what is the ask? So how can people, first of all, how can people find you and learn more?
LansingPromise.org.
Okay.
Simple as that.
And if they're motivated by this conversation, I'm sure they can show up and write a check and have a great evening and have the money kind of go to a good place, right? So what do those events look like? How many do you do?
So we actually do very few events.
Okay.
I'm a big believer in those who believe, give.
Yep.
And those who don't, won't. And so for those who believe, go to lansingpromise.org, give us a call. I'll buy the coffee if you really want to talk about what it looks like.
Yep.
We've actually had a number of folks approach us recently with planned giving. They want to put us in their will, put us in their estate. They'd like to make a planned gift. They'd make a charitable trust established. Great. We're good for that because we're playing for the long term. We're playing for keeps.
Yeah, right.
But reality is in April, we will be having an event.
Okay.
Details will come soon. So that's April 2024.
Okay.
It's going to be an exciting time. We'll have both a business and a community event, separate but together. And we will likely have a special guest, and that will be exciting.
Awesome.
But I think more than that, what we have found is those who make the biggest impact are those who believe the most in our kids.
Yep.
Right? So at The Promise, we believe in the inherent worth of every young person in this city, and we invest accordingly. So anybody that believes like we believe, we welcome the call. And to be perfectly honest, if someone has a passion or a heart for something and we don't do it, we will connect them with the organization that does. Right? We've had folks that want to do early childhood literacy. We do some of that, but there are organizations that also do it.
Right.
And so we make the connection. Mentorship, same concept. And so as we do this, the promise is only as strong as the community it operates in. And so we have an incentive and a real reason to make this work.
Fantastic. Well, Justin, that's been a fantastic conversation. We've been speaking with the executive director of the Lansing Promise, Mr. Justin Sheehan, lansingpromise.org. If you care about kids, you care about the future of our city,
Amen.
Get involved, write a check, ask the questions, and thank you for everything you do and for all the success you've had.
Thank you, Chris.